Because this game tried to do something different than the rest of the franchise, it wasn't quite as popular as the other ones. But let me tell you why this game deserves a second chance. You probably have already played or at least heard about this franchise before. Known as BC Kid in Europe, Bonk in America, or Genjin in Japan, these series are about the adventures of a prehistoric bald boy who headbutts everything in a side-scrolling game style. The first game was released in 1989 on the PC Engine, and since then it spawned several sequels on different platforms over the years. Genjin Land came out in Japan for the Game Boy in 1994, and the interesting thing about this game is that unlike the other ones, this one is not a side-scroller. From what I got about the intro, the story begins with Bonk sleeping on a beach, but the tide eventually rises and he ends up floating away on the ocean. When he wakes up, he's right next to King Gru and his amusement park island. And that's it, have fun. Now from the start screen you have two options. The first one is to enter the park and the second one is to go into a training screen. The training screen is quite simple. You are on a stage where you can perform every move Bonk will need on the park, like wall jumping, climbing, and the most important one, the gliding. Make sure you got the hang of it before leaving the training screen. There's this little guy on the bottom who just keeps shouting every move you make on a megaphone. Just ignore him. When you get to the park, there are at first 6 minigames, each one with 4 different levels of difficulty. At first you only have enough coins to buy 1 ticket for one of the games. The first is a whack-a-mole-like game, where you must hit a number of enemies that pop from the ground before the time ends. The more you hit, the better. You can also get coins for extra money on the end. A block breaker like game, where the goal is to break all the bones while keeping the ball from hitting the ground. You can get power-ups that remind you from the other Bonk games, like the weight that transforms you into a crab so you can hold the ball for better control, or the meat that makes Bonk angry, making the ball pierce through the bones. And you can also get extra money and lives. A climbing game where you must get to the top of the buildings within the time limit, keeping an eye out for enemies that pop from the windows and walls that can't be climbed, while also avoiding stuff falling on you. Also, when you get to the top, only one of the buildings is the real goal, so you might have to jump to the next one if you still have any time left. A haunted house game where you have to reach the end without getting scared 3 times. The hazards in this minigame are random, so if you have a number of lamps, one of them might fall on your head or it may not. You have to keep an eye out every time you play it. The roller coaster, where you just have to make it to the end of the ride while collecting money and avoiding enemies, spikes, and make sure you always land back on the cart. And the fruit feeding minigame, where you must feed the guys on the sides with a number of fruit within the time limit, while avoiding both the rocks and feeding them with vegetables, which just make them angry and ignore you for a while, costing you precious seconds. After you complete a minigame, you get a mark on your ticket. Once you get 4 tickets, you get a medal, and eventually you will unlock more stuff. Now, while some are easier than the others, the level of each minigame visibly increases with each ticket you buy. Some stages will just be harder, some would be longer, and some of them will just be trickier, like using the game mechanics to make you hit small edges, causing you to bounce off them. It might not seem like a big deal, but once you try it, you understand. When walking around, be careful with the guard. If he catches you, he'll take half of your money. Also, you might find some money on the floor eventually. If so, you have to decide if you want to return them to the god or not. If you do, most of the times you just get to keep the money anyway, for some reason. There is no password or saving system on this game, so you have to beat it in one sitting. Also, if you get tired of it, you can just leave the park through the entrance. Although if you do, you'll just lose your progress. And all you'll get will be the scene of Bonk floating back home. The first time I played this game I got somewhat disappointed because I was expecting a side-scroller like the other Bonk games, but once you give it another shot, you can see that it can be actually fun, trying your skills on those minigames. Now to be honest, this game is not as good as the other Bonk games, but it's interesting to see how the minigame progresses in difficulty, and to find out which ones you're better at. So, why not give it a shot?